Alright, hello everybody. Welcome back after a short break to the Mania 7 Key World Cup 2025. We have completed all of our round of 16 matchups. 8 teams have been eliminated. 8 are in the winner's bracket, and 16 are left in the loser's bracket for the quarterfinal stage. We just have one thing left to do this weekend, and that is show off the map pool that all 24 teams in quarterfinals will be playing against each other with next week. My name is Toph Daddy. I'm joined here by one of our map poolers, Tails DK. How's it going?
Hello everyone, I was so excited watching all the matches this week. We got to see a bunch of tiebreakers, but now it's time for what everybody has been waiting for, the Mappool Showcase. And we've got some cool maps around this time around. We do have a slightly bigger pool for the quarterfinals, 2 maps extra, as well as just 2 new categories, but they're not new. They were returning categories, so don't have to worry about inverse.
Just a little thing to expand the map pool a little bit. Not changing too much, just adding 2 new categories to go along with an increase in best of size for the matches that will be happening next weekend. So this week it was first to 5, best of 9. Next week we'll be starting best of 11, first to 6. So extra points to play for next week and extra maps, but not much else to say. We'll get to the additional categories when they come around. But without that, we can get into our first map.
Yeah. And it is gonna be A-like. And by Silent Shroom. This is a blocker map. This is a speed map of the pool. It's gonna be a very dump style focused map. We're gonna see fast sweeps, quite a few different snaps. We'll see them all throughout. So yeah, after this little intro here, we're gonna start getting into these fast sweeps.
Yeah, fast sweeps. Looks like most of the speed difference, and this is going to end up looking at around 240 BP or 280 BPM for the speed of a lot of those streams. And right now, we're already seeing some of those changes in rhythm that we were talking, or that Tails was talking about, as we start adding more of those 1/8 patterns. But kind of calm almost. The song kind of doesn't do a lot of justice for how fast this actually is.
Yeah, it is quite a short song as well, so it's not gonna be too stamina intensive, I don't think. It's a pretty fun map we did from playtesting. Just like these fast bursts. You don't really get like too much of like an actual like break, but there are some small breaks in between here, so yeah, stamina isn't too crazy.
Yeah, so we get out of that main stream section there. We still have a core of the map left, and we transition right back into another one. So, like you said, you get a small break there, but not really too much of one before you have to go right back into the 280 BPM streaming.
Yeah, I think this one is gonna be pretty comfortable for quite a few people. It's in the speed category. The patterns are overall pretty comfy, so. But yeah.
Absolutely. It's gonna move us into our second pick. Category staying the same so far, so might be able to predict based on Rice 2 from the previous round, but we are looking at our chord stream pick to come up. We've got a video here for it, but not an Osu original, so we'll be talking over this with the video. This is going to be Soundpiercer and Gigkiha featuring Yuzuha and Nilime, MI Light Connect. And this is our chord stream at 178 BPM, so a little bit of a bump in that BPM, 13 BPM increase here.
Yeah, I do want to point out this is our dense chord stream map, so...
a little bit of a hint as to what one of the new categories is here. But yes, very dense chord stream in this scenario. 2 minutes and 24 seconds. Pretty flowy, so the patterns aren't too bad. But on top of the additional density that we're trying to push for this Rice 2, there is also an increase in the OD. So accuracy is going to play a little bit more of a part than it did in the last 2 rounds on that Rice 2 pick.
Yeah, we do also see that this map does have like quite a few like sections, kind of accuracy, not streams. So you do get a bunch of breaks on this one. So stamina should be pretty okay. At least once you get, it takes a bit before you get into like the real streams. Yeah. And here we go. You're gonna see these small brackets, player patterns go across along with these super visually pleasing stair patterns going back and forth.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of adjacent to symmetrical, a little bit easier to handle than symmetrical patterns, but they do kind of just go back and forth. It almost looks like they're going from the right to the left and back again with a lot of these doubles. It does start to increase even in density just a little bit with some of those triples and brackets coming back into play here as we get into the last quarter.
Yeah, overall this is a pretty classic Kobe chord stream map if you've ever played one of those. Yeah, if you do get hit into the end, it's just gonna be streams all the way until the ending here. But yeah, the OD 8.5, very interesting to see how people's accuracy is gonna do on this. There are a few small bursts here and there, so it's not full on chord stream all the time, so yeah.
Absolutely, but that's going to be our dense chord stream pick. We can now move on into same categories again. Rice 3 is going to be our chord jack pick.
Yeah. And this is gonna be Tataeshi Tatakai no Uta, Ito Kanako, by Ito Kanako. This is a map by me. This is our Kojak map for this round. It's a 3 BPM increase, so not too much of an increase on the BPM from last round, but the patterns are gonna be a bit more tricky. You're gonna see a lot of long jacks and as well as some pretty tricky patterns throughout. It is gonna be a little bit progressive, so you're gonna see it slowly build up over time.
Yeah, so we start seeing a little bit of that increase in density actually right there. Well, we were seeing quite a few regular single jacks. Now we're getting more dense jacks here, more doubles after the quints and 6-note chords throughout. So you can very clearly kind of see the points where the density starts to increase, though you do get a little bit of a break here.
Yeah, it does have a break in the middle, so where it starts to build up from again, so you get plenty of time to have stamina, but it really does not stop after this, so it's just all out chord jack after this part once it really starts picking up.
Yeah, you can see from the combo markers halfway through the map, only at 1200, and total combo 3100. So that density has to stick up for pretty much the rest of the chart in order for it to get to that point. A lot of the points being scored will be in the second half.
Yeah, and here we get into the guitar solo, which has some long jacks there, but they're very hand split, so not
until you
gonna
get
be
the space bar in there. That I saw that space bar chord
There's
jack
a little
there.
bit of a space bar there.
People who use
Also a
their
little
left
tricky
thumb.
transition there.
Yeah, people who use their left thumb for those space long jacks might have a little bit tougher of a time because that'll be a split hand jack.
Yeah, and then we a small break here, and then we get into the densest part of the map here, at the end, where it's gonna go all out on that density.
Get that transition. All out on the density is right. Densest part of the map. Pretty consistently throwing 6-note chords at you in the middle of everything, and looks like even some kind of implicit long jacks in a few of those patterns too that you'll have to watch out for. So anchory and very difficult compared to the patterning we saw from the last two chord jack picks.
Yeah. But overall pretty straightforward. So next up here we have Morning Gloom by Asa. This is the Tower 2 map. This is a Rice Tag map. And we're really gonna get into some crazy bursts throughout this one. Gonna start out right here with some fast rolls and then straight into these tricky bursts with like some quite awkward like gaps in the patterns. So they're not like they're pretty hard to read overall.
Yeah, definitely pretty hard to read. You can see a pretty big burst focus in this opening section. I think something important to note about this is that it might be the least physically demanding rice pick overall. I think the other ones are a little bit more focused on making sure your physicality is here. This one obviously has a lot of fast bursts, but I think the biggest difficulty of it is going to be reading through the patterns and just not getting tripped up by some of the awkward midi jack and burst patterns throughout it.
Yeah. Also have to watch out. There are some triple jacks that appear on the space bar quite a few times throughout the map. That might be a little bit tricky if you're not prepared for them. So definitely gotta prepare in advance for this and practice it.
And a little bit of a slowdown section, not super slow here, but more focused on straightforward pattern, going back and forth with some small streaming sections. Has some bursts in there, but we'll start to see a little bit more of that difficulty show up again after that transition. There's another one of those. Oh, 4-note jack on the space bar, not just triple jacks.
And there's another one. And those bursts that are pretty tricky to hit properly. And now we're gonna get into it. You're gonna see these like small breaks that kind of trip you up into like these bursts all over the place. So it's not very consistent. Very tricky to get the hang of.
Yeah, very stop and go-esque. I say that a lot in 4K. You don't see it as often in 7-key, since tech is a lot more prevalent, I suppose, in 4-key. But when you do see that motion, it can be even make stamina even a little bit more difficult to handle.
Yeah, very exciting. And now we've got something a little special prepared. So take a look. That was our first Ozu original of the tournament. Pretty exciting. It was Evolutionary Anima by Akiri, and I've got to give some special thanks, of course. I want to thank Saturn Illustrations for the illustration, and Melon Boy for the storyboard, and of course, as always, Sakura006 for video design and graphic coordination. And this is our mixed rice pick here. Mapped by Critical Star and Maxis. We got a collab here. Very exciting map here.
Yeah, I
Can't
mean,
wait to see how people are gonna do this. It has a bit of everything.
yeah, it really does. You saw all sorts of core stream. It kind of has a similar structure to what we saw from the mixed rice pick from the previous round, where it has a lot of that chord stream, but just throws jacks into it, and then transitions between all different sections with a lot of different bursty type patterns. So it's going to be very fun to see the players go for it on this Rice 5. But we have one more rice pick, adding one more rice pick to the pool with the Rice 6, and this is going to be our new category for the Rice pool itself, adding a pick to it, obviously. New category. Hinted at a little bit earlier before, this is going to be our fast chord stream pick. So instead of it being kind of like Rice 1 is speed and has a little bit of that light chord stream aspect, and then 2 is our slower, denser chord stream, it's going to be now speed as Rice 1. Rice 2 is dense chord stream, and this is going to be faster but less dense chord stream here.
Yeah, and especially this year, it's gonna come pretty fast. We're not gonna go the same route as last year. It's gonna stay mostly on the lower density but really fast chord streams. So. And for this round, we got 192 BPM, which is quite a bit faster than our other chord stream picks so far. But the density should be pretty low, so overall...
Yeah, density lower and the pattern's a lot more comfortable looking, or at least overall more comfortable to hit consistently than, you know, when the density gets a lot higher from what we saw in Rice 2.
Yeah, and overall this is like, it's pretty straightforward as a chord stream pick. There isn't too much to say. It's gonna stay mostly at these double streams and with a few chords here in between, and not really get much more dense than that. It's gonna see here the ending section for the chorus here. I'm gonna get into a big stream here, but there are these little breaks in between, so stamina not gonna be too crazy.
Yeah, the map is also pretty short, about 30 seconds shorter than the dense chord stream pick from earlier in the pool, so even gonna be it's going to be even less on stamina, not just because of the breaks, but also the overall length of it.
Yeah. And that was the end of the rice picks, and now we're gonna get into long note 1. This is Karen no Seisu by Kashi Moimi Feet Sekai. This is LN1 pick, so this is the inverse by X-Neko. And we're really gonna get into some less coordination focused. There'll still be some coordination in this, of course, but it's gonna be long note inverse streams here we're gonna see. And this is something that hasn't really been present until now, so people are really gonna have to get the streams in inverse down.
Yeah, it feels like a pretty heavy step up from the previous round, but getting more into the streaming aspect of the inverse instead of the coordination will hopefully make it a little bit more popular than what we've been seeing over the past couple weekends, with it pretty much getting banned or protected every single time.
Yeah, I think it's gonna start getting a bit more normal from here on, because, you know, as the density like ramps up, it's gonna be a little bit less tricky for some teams even to play these, just because there is less coordination you have to do.
Yeah, and we see a little bit of that slower streaming throughout most of this map. We're going to the last third, but this final chorus has something very interesting. Those streams start to get pretty spicy towards the end.
Yep. Here we get into some more of these streams. They're pretty tricky. You're gonna see these big sweeps going back and forth there. Sometimes they have a little gap there in between. It's gonna be a little tricky.
We slow it down just a little bit here at the end. Not too much left to go over for this. It's kind of what we mentioned. It's a little bit less on the coordination aspect, but still has the inverse elements that we've been looking for. But should be pretty comfortable, I think, for a good number of players. And especially as we start to get later in the tournament, we're going to be seeing a lot more players comfortable with this kind of LN structure.
Yeah. And with that, let's get into our LN2, our long note density pick. This is Tsukiyomi Step featuring Nameless by Yuri Cannon. This is another X-Neko map, and we're gonna really see the density step up here. Only a 77 BPM increase, but the density reading is definitely way more intense than last week's.
Yeah, definitely. The overall patterning is still quite comfortable. I think, like you said, the main thing that's going to be worrying for players here is that in previous rounds, the LN density hasn't been super dense. You've mostly been having just a few LNs held on at the same time, but this, even in these verses, the slower sections, we're seeing pretty much the entire set of lanes covered and continuing that density. So it almost gets into like an inverse type structure without actually getting there. And instead of it only being 148 BPM with that density like we saw from LN1, we're holding at 172 for this whole time.
Yeah, and we're gonna see these like fast little sweeps that come around. They're pretty fun to play. As we get into more of this, it's a little bit of the same pattern you're gonna be seeing quite a lot here for the choruses. So if you can get the chorus down, you should be good.
Yeah, absolutely. We get through that chorus. We have a little bit of a transition section here. Kind of on the has a little bit of that coordination aspect with some extended long notes, but still shouldn't be too bad. And then some short long notes. Very straightforward there as we transition into the end with just a small section to get us right back into the density.
Yeah, and we're gonna see these patterns back in here again that we also saw from the last chorus. Just gonna be full on density here for this. A little bit of inverse almost there towards the end. But
yeah,
well, pretty comfortable pick.
Yeah. Got even a repeat of the intro, so as long as you can get through the intro, should be able to finish off this chart. And 5400 combo later, 2 minutes and 20 seconds, we've got our second LN pick. And now we're getting into LN3. It's going to be Ceatrus's Ataraxia 2020 rework, mapped by Blocko again. And this is going to be our LN mix pick here. And I mean, it's not much really to say. It's kind of the same idea as what we've been seeing from the mix picks throughout the rest of the tournament, where you're going to have those major density sections, but it's going to be paired with a lot more heavy coordination than what we saw in LN2.
Yeah, we're gonna see these fast streams. It's actually pretty density heavy, I wanna say, but there are these like more coordination heavy sections filled in, especially here with these one-hand patterns and some tricky back and forth stairs patterns.
Yeah.
It's pretty consistent throughout, honestly. There is this like small little breaks, but you're gonna be pretty much always like playing something pretty intense.
Yeah, and I think what's important is like we saw like a slower section there, but that was still pretty heavy on the coordination. And even with this increasing density in this section, we do still see some pretty Tough patterns on the coordination side. You see those extended long notes going through some of those denser patterns. So still not going to be the most straightforward thing in the world, even though the density does start to bump itself up and become more apparent in a section like this.
Yeah, something to notice that it is a pretty fast map for the Olympics, so yeah, the pretty fast long notes here. So the short ones might be a little tricky to get great accuracy on, especially when there's just a lot of them.
Absolutely, and that's gonna do it for our LN mixed pick. And we've got one more LN pick, so our second additional map added to this pool, and it's going to be the introduction of a dedicated coordination pick. So instead of coordination being kind of looped into that inverse category for LN1, it gets its own category, and this one is a doozy, Fu Da Huang. By Monster Siren Records and Kirara Magic, added an extra Ra. OD7, pretty slow, not too physically demanding in pretty much any part of this, but it is 3.5 minutes. That's gonna be taxing on your mental state, I think, especially having to focus so much on the coordination aspect of that just is omnipresent in this map.
Yeah, we do see the return of the coordination pick from the qualifiers, which it's been absent so far, but here it is again, and we're gonna see it's gonna be just full-on coordination for 3.5 minutes. It is OD7, so it's a little bit on the higher end of the long note picks. Usually they've been kind of a little bit lower here, but OD7 coming in here.
Yeah, we did see the inverse map. The LN1 from round of 16 was also pretty long. It was just about 3 minutes. This one even longer than that, so really pushing the envelope on what is potentially a major point of consistency as far as the LN category goes.
Yeah, this map does have quite a few breaks and quotation marks. They're gonna be filled with coordination patterns, of course. So, not quite always breaks, but you know, they're not gonna be that physically demanding per se. We do see one of them here. We are just like slowly building up here. We do have some really long notes on this map.
Yeah, you'll especially see some of those during the choruses. In particular, the ones that I noticed were the ones that were on spacebar, which do happen quite a bit, where they'll last like 4 measures or something, while a bunch of other coordination patterns are happening around it. So really not going to be the most friendly patterns in the world.
Yeah, also something to note, I've seen a little bit in the chat, so we are, for the stream, it's going off the old star rating, so this one is actually 4.58 stars, and not 4.8.
Even better.
Yeah, it's even lower. We do get into this part here again. We do have a few, like, a little bit release patterns here and there, but they're so slow that they're mostly just coordination focused.
Yeah, feels like we're kind of approaching the end, but we still have quite a bit here, probably about 20 seconds or so left to get through, and we're not letting you go without a few more lower density coordination patterns.
Yeah. Actually, it's a little bit of a tricky outro here, despite being so calm.
Can't let up right at the end, no matter how much you might want to. After 3 minutes of having to focus on the release timing and finger independence throughout the entire chart.
Yep, and that was it. And that was it for our long note pool. We are now moving into hybrid with our first one. I don't know how to pronounce the first name, but it is Nova Trinity by Graham versus DJ Genki. This is a map by Stan. This is our generic hybrid of the pool. You're gonna see a little bit of everything here. with the generic hybrid tends to be. It's gonna be very much like your typical rank style of map, but it's very tricky.
Yeah, you'll see kind of a lot of just regular streaming. You see some of this kind of lighter chord stream with the interplay with the long notes here, and they get slightly denser as this section goes on. We'll get into a middle section that kind of has the same structure, just a little bit lighter on the long notes there, and the ending kind of pushes it up to another level on the long note side of things, where it'll be, I think, the densest LN part, but the straightforwardness of the patterns kind of stays consistent throughout the map.
Yeah, some of these patterns are deceptively hard here. They actually take quite a bit of coordination. And you don't want to like accidentally get lost in these because they're pretty hard to get back into, honestly. Yeah. Something to note as well is that you're pretty much always going to see long notes throughout this map at pretty much every point, almost. It's very rare that there's just no long notes on the screen. They'll be pretty much always holding on to something.
Yeah, even if they are on the lighter side, you will still be having to deal with the long notes no matter where you are in the map. So it has a little bit of a different structure to some of the hybrids that we've been seeing previously, where you'll have like dedicated right sections and dedicated long note sections. This one more so plays like it's a hybrid the whole way through.
Yeah, definitely. We are gonna get into the ending here in just a moment. Just after the full build up.
Yeah, you can see those LNs starting to build up in this transition here. As I mentioned, gets a little bit more difficult on the long note side in this ending. A little bit more abrasive as far as patterns holding down those long notes for longer and just getting a little bit higher density overall.
Yeah, those ones are kind of hard to accuracy. And then we get into like these big chords here.
Yeah, and then coming out of that, we'll have a rehash of what we saw from the intro, same kind of part. So another situation where if you can get through the intro, you can probably get through the end, but mind the potential issues with stamina, because there really isn't much of any slowdowns through this map.
Yeah. And moving into our next pick, it is Isophobe by Pasocom Music Club featuring Puni Denki. This is a Lempai map. This is our technical hybrid. This one is actually pretty cool, I think. It's gonna be kind of like a dump map, but we're gonna be following the vocals a little bit with these like long notes, and we're gonna have some pretty tricky long note patterns throughout, as well as just some bunch of jacks mixed in.
Yeah, you can see some of those longer long notes with some mini jacks on the same hands. Those are going to be particularly tricky to hold consistently on, but still with a few lighter patterns here. Do see a couple of sweeps coming in, but really the big deal right now is that the coordination is going to be a little bit more difficult in this opening section alongside those mini jacks.
Yeah, something you'll see is these big long note rolls once in a while. Here we do have big long note chords that you actually have to release pretty quickly. A little bit of reminding of what we had in release like towards the end last year in the final. And here we go.
Yeah, that LN density immediately increasing as we hit the chorus, and some pretty awkward release timings in some places too, and some reverse shields, which this might be the first time I've seen those in this tournament.
They've definitely been around, but they've been more hidden before, not quite as obvious as in this map. And here we have a little break before we get back into it. A little rice tech section. Do get a few jacks. These are overall pretty fast, I want to say.
Yeah, 160 BPM was no slouch as far as the speed of the jacks. A little less dense than our core jack pick, so obviously not going to be too terrible, but the speed is certainly something to watch out for. And that dump element that you mentioned earlier certainly coming to a head here as we get some faster patterns with some interweaving long notes with those dumpy bursts.
Yeah, and then we have a little outro here. Overall, pretty fun map.
Yeah, that's going to do it for our second hybrid. We've got one more hybrid in the pool, one more regular pick before our tiebreaker, but you might get a little taste of what to look out for with our hybrid 3 Siramaru Tsuzumi. It's going to be, as it was with the rest of our map pool so far, the mini tiebreaker. So it's 4 minutes long, even longer than what we have been seeing from the hybrid threes in the previous rounds. And this one is pretty brutal. This one has a lot of LN sweeps and regular burst patterns and transitioning in and out constantly between those two types of patterns.
Yeah, you're pretty much not gonna get like you're gonna be locked in for most of this. I want to say there's just gonna be a lot of tricky patterns all the way throughout. You see some mini jacks in there, tripping up our replayers a little bit. And we do even have some small coordination here.
You thought you were going to escape it with the additional density added to LN1, only for the map poolers to say, nope, not happening. We're giving you coordination in the hybrids and an extra category just to make sure it doesn't go away.
Yeah. And here we go, back into these fast sweeps. They're gonna be really tricky, along with the jacks, and as well as these long notes that are pretty long. You're just gonna have to hold on to. It does have some really tricky bursts in here, but
yeah, tricky bursts. You saw some of those like slightly extended long notes, something that you're not really going to be able to necessarily autopilot through when they're extended as long as they were on some of those patterns. Like right there, that's a lot harder to handle than it probably, at least get good accuracy on. It's a lot harder to handle than just something that you'd be able to autopilot for the most part. Ew, those were some shields.
Yep. We are gonna see just more shields come in as we progress through these rounds. They'll be slowly introduced. Yeah, we do see some pretty tricky long notes there with a tiny bit of overlap.
Oh, this is some release section. This is kind of unlike any of the coordination that we've seen up to this point, where it's largely focused on the slower LNs with differing release timings, but it's only a transition to get us into some more of those dense technical patterns with the interweaving LN sweeps throughout that we've been seeing kind of constantly in this map.
Yeah. We do see these. Yeah, we're just gonna have these long notes there you're gonna have to hold on. And they're also gonna be on the same column, so you're gonna have to release it and then hold on again. While keeping your focus on the rest of the things going on. Just a little bit of dump there, almost for these wubs. I'm gonna follow the wubs there with the long notes. And into a little bit of fast streams there, here and there. And we're gonna reach the end here.
Yeah, continuing to increase that density, and that was a pretty brutal set of sweeps for the long notes, but it does start to slow down for this ending here. Still has a little bit of tricky patterning, but it definitely kind of calms down a bit compared to the rest of the chart that we were seeing.
Yeah. And there we go. And now we only have one more map left in the pool. And that is going to be our tiebreaker, which is the Distorted Love Song, the full version here, by T Pasolite featuring Rizna. This is 7 minutes long.
7-minute tiebreaker. This is, I think, longer than everything else has been by over a minute and a half. So we're gonna have quite the treat to get through. Starts off with a small coordination section, but the important part of this map does not start here. We're gonna start seeing some really difficult patterns. It is 240 BPM, and you'll see what that exactly means when it comes to the long note patterns in this map.
Yeah, you gotta start here with some tiny small bursts, but there are some pretty tricky long note patterns here right at the start.
Kind of a small taste of what you might start seeing later on in the map. This map definitely is going to continue giving you those bursts, going to have some chord streaming at that 240 BPM, and is going to have some of these dense long notes still, again, 240 BPM. So it is not going to pull any punches here for this quarterfinals tiebreaker.
Yeah, we're gonna get into a full chord stream-ish section here. Just super fast streams. It's almost like a speed map, almost, how fast these ones are.
And you get a little bit of a quote-unquote break with some of these jacks, but the chord I pick up this pool is 120 BPM, so you got a little bit of a matching speed there with some maybe lower density there, but transitions right into some more of these long notes. And these are just so difficult.
Yeah, these are really tricky to play. We do see these rise patterns also go in here, as well as a few shields.
Always, I say, oh, I haven't seen shields in this tournament yet, and then the map pool selectors decide, let's put 3 maps in a row with shields just to mess with this guy's head.
Yeah. I mean, they've been there in all the other pools, you just haven't noticed them.
With the easier pools, things are going to be slower, so it's harder to tell when things are necessarily shields, but it's also been further between, I think, than what we've been seeing here, especially with the higher concentration of speed, or like higher BPM maps within these pools. Like 240 BPMs, you're going to notice the shields.
Yeah. We do have a little break here. Quote-unquote break. It's still really fast. And then we're gonna get into some more of these long note patterns here that we saw for the build-up earlier. Here we go. This is deceptively difficult, I feel like. These super long notes with these rise notes in between. A lot of coordination required here.
Yeah, it looks calmer than what we've been seeing so far, but that's not going to be any easier than what we've seen so far. As the streaming starts to pick a little bit up, you can even see a couple bursts throughout these sections, but just more intermingling long note patterns, similar to what we were seeing in LN1 throughout that, keeping it kind of very hybridy.
Yeah. We did see like they were kind of split in between each hand, so there was rice going on one hand and long notes going on the other. But now we are getting into some more just pure rice streams here, before we get into the break section here, quote unquote.
Yeah, quote unquote. Every time I hear break in 7 key, it just means coordination long notes, and that's not a break.
Yeah. Oh, and here we get into a fast tech section, I want to say here.
Yeah, kind of one of the first... I mean, we saw earlier there was that fast light chord stream section with the jacks. This was only the second time we've seen a section that's kind of purely rice and going to test that side, but it's going to transition into some more quote-unquote 7 key breaks with coordination. Yep.
Okay, but here we actually have a break before we get into some, more coordination.
Yeah, it's always going to be there. This last third is brutal.
Oh yeah, here we go. This part is so difficult. Super tricky long notes there. Fast rolls. Would you see some shields again coming back?
These are a little bit slower shields than what we've been seeing throughout the rest of the map. More like, kind of like chord jacky type shields, but still there nonetheless.
Yeah, and here we have a little bit of almost. I would just want to call it inverse.
Almost.
But
Kind of is. The gaps are a
yeah.
little bigger than you'd expect from inverse, and that's actually going to cause, I think, some pretty major issues. We actually see Chiwi finding a drop in that section, which you normally wouldn't really expect from that caliber of player.
Yeah, you gotta get back into these fast LN sections.
The LNs just keep piling on. The density continues. 240 BPM, kind of Jackie type pattern with some 240 bursts in the middle of it. Definitely going to be a challenge for everyone here. Going back into the jacks, adds in some long notes for some extra bits of finger independence requirements, and then finishing off this section with absolutely insane speed. And that pattern was kind of mean.
Yep. And here we have a break.
Don't take your hands off the keyboard. They were so mean for this.
Yep. There is more. There is a little bit of a long burst at the end. But you do have a break before this, so you can look at the other team's score or whatever you want to do.
If I was in your shoes, just don't do that. If
Yeah.
you're in the tiebreaker going into the ending, don't look at the other scores. You'll get distracted before we have a very difficult rice section coming up at the end.
Here we go. Just so fast speed. We got some jacks on here.
So don't stress yourself out. It'd be really bad to have nerves in this section, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And there we go.
And it's finally over after a long break and then that very long race section at the end. But that's going to be our tiebreaker for the quarterfinals pool in the 7-key World Cup 2025. These maps will be available for download shortly, and I am excited to see if we get any more tiebreakers. We had 3 this weekend, so teams looking very well matched for this tournament. I'm excited to see if that continues in the following weekends.
Yeah, super excited to see what people think about these maps. We do have coordination now in the pool, so you also have to pick between inverse and coordination now if you just want to ban the long nuts. So a little bit tricky.
Yeah, a little bit trickier to make that decision, but yeah, like I said, map will be available for download shortly. Schedules for the upcoming weekend of matches will also be available shortly, but I don't think there's much else to say. You got anything else for us, Tails?
As always, the map pool feedback is open. If you find any issues with any of the maps, tell them early. We can fix them. And yeah,
but
that's all.
That'll be it for us for this weekend. Take care, everyone, and make sure to come back for what is absolutely going to be an exciting match or exciting weekend full of matches. More teams on the elimination block, and after next week, we will be left with only 12 teams to make it into the semifinals round. You're not going to want to miss it. See you guys then.